Hello and thank you for joining me for this session today on creating a culture of challenge. My name is Rodger and I'm Deputy Director of English at Kingsthorpe College. I hope that you can take away some strategies today that, where possible, are low cost and high impact. Strategies that, regardless of a student's prior attainment, help to make them feel and therefore become more successful and aspirational in our subject. I'm going to start today with a little bit of etymology, which of course is a massive surprise as I am an English teacher. So culture comes from the Latin cultura, or perhaps the root word colere, meaning tending and growing. And I think that's important because whenever we think about culture shifting or culture changing, in order to do that, it needs to be something that we revisit, something that needs tending, something that needs specific and nurturing care and attention. The only way we're going to do that is to make sure that every single day we are living and breathing that commitment to a culture of challenge. And it forms into two key ideas: high expectations of what that looks like in the classroom related to student progress, and the power of our subject to inspire and motivate. So, the phrase high expectations does get thrown around a lot in education. I remember when I was a trainee teacher, I was told that high expectations are vital for students to succeed. And that is, of course, true. But the phrase is often used in relation to behaviour and student output, i.e. they will complete this task, and if not, I'll kind of follow through with the behaviour system or with parental contact, as appropriate. But if we apply this phrase and this kind of behaviour technique of high expectations to challenge and our expectations of how clever our students can be, we suddenly kind of find ourselves in an opportunity for real progress. So before we dig deeper into how we can build high expectations into our curriculum thinking and subject knowledge, it's important to remind ourselves that students can and should surprise us. We are human, with all sorts of biases and opinions. And whilst we should of course work hard to tackle those presumptions we make about students, our language and interactions with these young people, it matters. They notice and they internalise what we think of them. So the Pygmalion Effect is one of those often quoted pieces of research about kind of student understanding of ability and their pupil performance, and most importantly, the teacher expectations of how they can perform. But as Ross Morrison McGill says, it can make or break progress. And we can build setting the bar high into our language within the classroom before we even begin to think about task choice or differentiation or subject knowledge. So let's look at some concrete examples of how we might build our understanding of the Pygmalion Effect into our classroom talk. So firstly, drawing attention to the yet in making progress. That models the truth that we all know about progress, in that it is not linear. Students will go through peaks and troughs as they make progress in their studies. So drawing attention to that they haven't done it yet, but this is how they move forward, is really, really powerful. And the more you repeat this, the more students will start to believe that that's how this works. Secondly, building student resilience is really, really important, because students can sometimes be, and I think we can all recognise this in students that we teach, they can be perhaps reluctant to embrace challenge. And by giving students concrete examples of how and when they were successful, no matter how small those successes might be, that is really, really powerful for reminding students that they have done this before and they have achieved well. And crucially, it helps them to not see challenge as something that only the most able need to do. It is something that we all need to do to challenge all of ourselves. Great teaching and learning kind of has challenge for all built into its DNA. Now, all teachers can fall victim to set mentality. And this shift from thinking about sets and ability to thinking about prior attainment and, crucially, potential can be key here. Students can initially, as I've said, be quite reluctant to embrace challenge and to embrace kind of probing and questioning and thinking about their answers more deeply. It can feel threatening and exposing to be asked to challenge yourself in that way. And of course, students, like all people, don't want to get it wrong. So actually, this technique can be quite useful when questioning. Reminding students of what they had just said. So they've given an answer to a question, reminding them and saying, you just said this. Why do you think that's important? What word made you think this? And reminding them of what they've just said can be important, because students often forget kind of the first answer they've just given. And reminding students that actually talking and writing are inextricably linked. So one final strategy is to encourage academic oracy in the same way that we model academic literacy, and I'm going to come on to that in a moment. Ask students to use the key words from the lesson in their verbal responses. Plan paired work, where students talk through before they write. Give sentence stems to scaffold how to sound like an English critic, before explicitly teaching discourse markers and analytical verbs. And so this brings me to an understanding that the two are inextricably bound together. High expectations of what our students can and will achieve, and deep subject knowledge. So Quigley's work on vocabulary makes it clear how crucial it is for us to explicitly teach, model, and therefore expect academic language from our students. So around 2,000 words make up 80% of our spoken language, and that's important. If we simply encourage talk in the classroom without a structured approach to academic language, it will not develop children's language. So the academic language that we expect in the English classroom is huge, ranging from tier 2 words such as analyse, explore, and the difference between those, to the contextual and critical vocabulary that for real academic success students need to have at their fingertips. Words such as epistrophe, objectification, voyeurism, othering, that range from kind of academic subject terminology to critical concepts. That language needs to be explicitly taught. So we must create the conditions for and demand a broad and rich subject vocabulary from all students, with multiple opportunities for them to consolidate that understanding of that particular word, for example, othering, and to use that in multiple different contexts. So this needs to be carefully thought out at curriculum level and planning level to decide at what point students need to know, for example, about Elizabethan anxieties and miscegenation. At what point do they need to know that in order to then build on it later for their A-level study of Othello, right from a year 7 curriculum all the way up to a year 13. So which schemes of learning will they build on and add to that knowledge before and after? By helping students to articulate powerful and critical concepts, we are helping them to feel and become cleverer. For students to be able to talk about anxieties, miscegenation, archetypes, masculinity, othering, and to be able to use that in a format where they are building on their knowledge of that primary text. So we also need to set the bar high with what students can achieve. And when questioning and planning tasks, we need to think about cognitive conflict, ensuring that students' existing knowledge base here is challenged with new or different information. So here are some examples that we might use for some well-known literary texts. By taking time to teach the vocabulary of hyperbolise, tosh, manipulative, for example, in number 1, many students will be able to engage with that kind of question for an inspector calls, not just the most able. It might take longer, it might mean more scaffolding, more prompts and more modelling, but our expectations of what we think students can handle may surprisingly juxtapose against what they actually can do. And planning this by thinking, this is where I'm setting the bar, can be really, really powerful. And finally, share. Regularly share different examples of student work almost in every lesson. Start with ones that you can praise because they've embedded your feedback and teaching, and slowly, gradually, you can start to grow a culture where students become confident, they feel clever, they're open to challenge, they feel successful and therefore proud to show their work and proud to make their work better with their peers. Use these opportunities to motivate and inspire both that particular student and the others in the classroom. So we can use strong examples to help students understand how, why, and where they're being assessed through live marking or through talking through marking. So this is an example from a top set, and I'm going to use those Ross from Friends air quotes deliberately here, and it was shared with that class. So as I taught through this marking, students identified where and if they too, for example, had used links. And although there's nothing inherently wrong with her saying, furthermore, this show of power, aggression and lack of remorse links to the devil, we talked through which other words might be more powerful because they therefore show the relationship and how Stevenson is putting the Hyde and the devil together. And so of course maybe he's aligning the two, maybe he's reflecting contemporary anxieties about religion, maybe he's thinking about paralleling something. Language choice matters, and the more we can model with students how and why that is and how to deliberately choose vocabulary, the better they will be. So you just saw an example from a top set student, and this is an example from a bottom set student. And after loads of work on repeated motifs, on interesting hooks, on looking at models together, modelling live together, this student produced a piece of work that was far longer, better, more developed than they had ever written before. And the pride of having that work shown to others was just invaluable to their sense of self-worth, and provided that opportunity for me to then say, remember when you did this, think about how successful you were then. And actually the entire class felt something when that work was shared, because they felt like someone on their same level was being successful and that they therefore could too. All students can be successful in English. All students can become cleverer in English, and all students can be part of growing that culture of challenge that we want to see in every single English classroom across this county and across this country. Thank you so much for watching and listening today. If you've got any questions, please just drop me an email. I've put my email address on the end of this slide, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this amazing CPD event that's being held today. Thank you so much.